All right, I want to spend some time talking about the assignment. The assignment is very involved. There's a lot of stuff going on here. There's an awful lot of text. Of course, that was the focus of this week's material. It was learning how to place text, make text styles, and then get text to go where you need it to go. This is not a technical drawing per se. This is more of a poster. Think of it like a flyer or an advertisement. And the advertisement is for our industrial drawing program. So you're putting together some graphics for me, and look, we're not graphic artists. That's a totally separate field. But we can do a little bit of design in AutoCAD, and we can make some snazzy looking graphics when we have to. And if you've got some art training or some graphic arts training, that's all the better, okay? What I want you to focus on is laying things out accurately, following the conventions that we've set up for working with text, and we'll learn a couple of new tools along the way also. Okay, so this is the finished product. When this is all done, this is exactly what we're going to wind up with on a single sheet of large paper, 11 by 17 paper. Okay, so let's take a look at what we're doing. Our setup is going to be to start a brand new drawing from scratch. So, brand new drawing from scratch. We'll go to start drawing. And then save it with the name B12-5A, your initials, in your assignment folder. Now, this drawing is much bigger than stuff we've drawn so far, right? And now let's take a look at our default CAD file when it opens up. How much space do we have out here to work in? Well, almost infinite. I mean, I gave you a drawing of the solar system, and the whole solar system fit in there. So you should know that AutoCAD's pretty big as far as how much space you have to work in. But you know, AutoCAD likes you to tell it before you start working how much space you need. A brand new CAD file like this file, if we go to the settings for the grid and snap, and we tell it to only allow the grid within the limits of the drawing, so we'll uncheck this box that says display the grid beyond the limits. You see a standard AutoCAD drawing, believe it or not, starts off and it gives you about 9 by 12. If I say go 12 over and 9 up in the Y, it's assuming you're going to draw something small. Well, that doesn't mean you have to draw something small. It just means it's planning on you drawing something small. Now, you can draw out here past the limits, but you know, sometimes when you're working out past the limits of the drawing, AutoCAD starts getting cranky and it doesn't do what you want it to do. So a lot of times, not a big deal, but sometimes it will slow you down and it'll trip you up and it'll be frustrating as heck. So this drawing is going to be bigger. The instructions tell us to set our limits. So at the bottom left corner is 0, 0, but so the top right corner is 17 by 11. 17 in the X and 11 in the Y. So go in and set up your units. Type in units. I'm sorry, limits. Type in limits. Bottom left corner will stay 0, 0, so just hit enter. Top right corner, which is currently 12 inches in the X and 9 inches in the Y, make it 17, 11. And you see how it just gave us some extra space to work in out here. And that's what we want. We want to tell AutoCAD before we start working that here's how much space I need. And it'll give you as much as you want. It's just a courtesy thing, and if you are courteous to AutoCAD, it'll be courteous to you later on. If I need 1,000 feet by 500 feet, it'll give it to you. If you need 2 light years by 1 light year, it'll give it to you. Just ask it before you start drawing so we don't have any mishaps in areas outside the limits. Okay, so we've got our limits set. We can set our grid to half-inch increments. So grid and snap. You can set it to half and half. That will turn off adaptive grid. We'll put a dark line every 2 spaces or every inch. Okay. And then we've got some layers to set up. So go in. You know how to set up layers. I shouldn't have to show you that, but you have 4 layers. A layer for frames, a layer for text, a layer for your map, and a layer for your hatch. So get them set up using the right colors, line types, and line weights. When you're done, you're going to set up some text styles, right? So text styles are going to be the fonts that we use in this drawing for different pieces of text. So you have a style named Roman S. It uses the Romans SHX font, and its height is 0. Here's Poor Richard. The font is Poor Richard, the name is Poor Richard, the height is 0. So work your way through and put in these 6 different text styles. I'm going to tell you 5 of the fonts. You get to pick one of the fonts for yourself. It's going to be part of your north arrow, and we'll talk about that in a little while. Okay, so once you've got your drawing set up, you've set your limits, you've set your layers, you've set your text styles, we can start drawing. You're going to draw some frames for me, and the frames are these boxes, okay, these rectangles. So on the frames layer, draw filleted frames using the sizes and start in the lower left frame at 0, 0. Okay, so lower left corner, 0, 0, click on rectangle, tell it start at 0, 0, and then we're going to work out from there. Now there's a variety of ways of drawing these frames. You can use your snap to grid if you wanted to, you can use coordinates if you wanted to. I guess you could even, if you wanted to, draw them with lines, if that's easier for you. Turn on your polar track and work that way, whatever works for you. Okay, the sizes of all this stuff are on the next page. So if we take a look at the next page, you'll see how big everything is. Our bottom left box is 4.5 wide and 4 3/4 tall, and you're going to start at 0, 0. Then there's a 1/2 inch space, or a 1/2 inch gap, and then you have a 6 inch wide, 4 3/4 inch tall box, and then another 1/2 inch gap because the 1/2 inch gap is typical, and then our last gap, or our last box, is 3 3/4 wide and 4 3/4 tall. So they're all the same height, they just have some varying widths. All the gaps are the same. 1/2 inch up, 1/2 inch space, 1/2 inch space, 1/2 inch space. We've got another set of boxes. And these boxes might be a little bit hard to see, but they are 1/2 inch in from the edges of where these lines would be. So if that was the edge, a 1/2 inch in is where that box starts, and a 1/2 inch in is where that box starts. Right, so there's a 1/2 inch all around. Same thing here. This box here basically starts where the fillet is. Right? It starts where the curve of the fillet begins, and it stops where the curve of the fillet starts on that side. Same thing here. This box lines up with the start point of that fillet and the end point of that line where the next fillet starts. So this is another way of laying it out if you want to do it that way rather than doing the math to figure it out. We have another 1/2 inch space up here, and then we have our final large rectangle at the top, 15 1/4 wide and 3 1/4 tall. Okay, and then we've got all of our boxes on the screen. This is the framework for the drawing. Now all of these boxes, all of these rectangle frames have round corners, at least the large ones do. So to do that you got some options, right? If you use the rectangle tool and you drew some rectangles, you could go in after you're done and use your fillet tool to round the corners off. Just set your radius for the 1/2 inch and then multiple fillets and then work your way around, right? Now this is not the fastest way to do it, but we'll get the job done. Okay, here's another option. When you make a rectangle, one of the options is to create the rectangle with fillets. Yeah, so look, if I click on fillet and tell it the size fillet I want, I can actually go in there, and do you see how it's making a box that's already filleted? There's a time saver, that's nice. So you can use this method to create your rectangles so that you don't have to do the fillet as a separate operation if you want to, but if you don't, that's fine too. Okay, when we've got our filleted rectangles, our frames all ready to go. We're going to talk about what goes inside. So our next page gives a layout that shows what goes on the next. Alright, so when our boxes are complete, this is what we're looking at. Our frames are all complete. They are ready to go. And we can talk about the next step. In the next step, we need to place some text. Now, what you're going to see is there is a little bit of information here pointing to the text you're placing. It tells you the style, the font, the height, and the justification or the alignment. Okay, so for that first one, Bakersfield College, you're going to set Swiss 721 BDOULBT for the style. 0.65 is your height. Your alignment is top center. Alright, so we'll set the Swiss 721 outline text as our current style. We're going to be using single line text for everything up here. Okay, and then the question is going to be, how does it line up? What does it line up with? So if you look closely at your course pack, and you're going to have to look kind of close, you'll see I've got some very light lines that I've included to give you the points to line your text up with. Now, this might be a little hard to see on here, so what I'm going to do is over in my CAD drawing, I'm going to make it a little bit more obvious. Okay. So I just made a layer called construction lines, and what I'm going to do is just draw some light lines that start and stop at the fillets up in the top box. And now these are not part of the drawing, they're just there to show me where the middle is, to show me where the fillet starts and stops at the top, and to find the middle over here. Okay, so when it's time to place that text up here, I know exactly where the top center point is. So I'll go back to my text layer, and I'll use some single line text, and I'm going to justify it top center. Height was 0.65, angle 0, and we start typing. All caps for this one. Okay. And we see that the center grip lines up here, even with the middle of the box this way, and even with the fillet, or you could look at it another way, it's a ½ inch down, right? Okay, we've got some more text that needs to be placed. We've got serving our community since 1913 using freestyle script at a height of 4 with middle center alignment. Okay, so I'll set it up for freestyle script for my next one, and I'm going to make some middle center text that goes there.